I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Today, my guest is Radha of Sewing Through Fog. She created her business in 2021 and has become pretty prolific on Instagram and through her website. She is an artist with her textiles and comes from the fashion world. So let's dive in. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'm very excited. So this is going to
Yeah,
be
awesome. It was so funny, and I'll just share this because it's the weirdest thing, but I feel like it's kind of how my life has been for the last year and a half, is that I've been trying to, like, write stuff down more, and I've been trying to kind of get things on paper and say, like, "This is what I wanna do this year, and these are things that I think would be fun." And I literally, over the weekend, wrote down, "It would be really cool to be on a podcast and talk about quilting." I am not kidding. I wrote that down, and that's why, like, when you I am me, I'm like, "Wait a second."
like, is this real?
It was it was so strange. It was so strange. So and I'm not like a giant, well, maybe I am, like a big, like, the universe is,
I
but
am,
that's
so
kind
I'm
of
here for it.
okay. That's how things have kind of been going, and so that was just such a strange strange moment, but
That's awesome. And I was like, I I don't even know. I think Instagram just suggested you to me. And so I was like, she looks fun. And I just started following you and I was like, oh my gosh, I just fell in love with your stuff. And I like your comment of like being medium silly because I'm a very silly person. So I just was like, that was fun.
I don't know if that is 100% accurate because the probably people would say that I'm very silly, but I, like, try to tone it down a little bit. I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
like, I kind of feel like we were saying, like, life is fucking tough, and
Yeah.
it's I try. I'm a very passionate and serious person about the things I care about, so I kinda
Hmm.
have to, like, at the same time, balance that
Hmm.
by just being, like, not taking myself too seriously and just kind of,
Yeah.
and how can you not be silly on, like, social media?
Right. I know. It's like,
Because
you don't
it's
have
like,
to be.
yeah.
Yeah. You got to be entertaining. And I think it's, for those of us who are silly, it's kind of a fun little outlet because it's like, oh, I can bring my weirdness to this platform and other weirdos are going to find me and it's going to be awesome.
I totally agree. I think that's, like, sometimes I get it when people complain about having to make reels or having to do all that stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, it's a if you can't beat them, join them thing. It's
Hmm.
like, I'm not gonna do it the way people tell you to. I'm just gonna do whatever I wanna do and have fun with it because,
Yeah,
I mean, like, why not?
exactly. Well, so let's rewind a tiny bit and
Yeah.
tell me all the things. But mostly how did you get started in textiles and sewing and all that?
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, textiles, I was thinking back on this, today, and textiles have been a part of my life since, like, I was born. And even, like, so my great grandma came over from Russia in around, like, 1910 through Ellis Island, and worked as a seamstress in New York, very kind of, like, stereotypical Jewish, that's kinda what happened.
Yeah.
But that, like, the just sewing and really being like a craftsman when it comes to textiles was something that was just passed down. And my mom taught me to sew when I was really little. I, like, can't remember not trying to make my own Halloween costumes and making, like, dresses for my dolls and stuff. And it was just something that was kind of part of me. And I had, like, a lot of textiles around me. I had kind of a unusual childhood where I grew up on, a Hindu commune in Northern California.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so, like, my mom would wear, if you think of, like, traditional Indian dresses, like saris and stuff. So
Mhm.
I have this giant fabric library, and half of it is these silk and cotton, like, saris from my childhood. So,
Oh,
it's just like there are these things that I remember from different parts of my life, and a lot of them tie back to fabric.
whoa.
And it was like so I went, for college, I studied costume design because I was like, well, I didn't wanna it's funny too, I never wanted to be an artist or a designer, or I never saw myself that way. I always saw myself as more of, like, a business or, like, a thinking type of person, or someone that would, like, help other artists.
Sure.
And, like, costume design was a lot of it was, like, research, and a lot of it was understanding the history of textiles, which is just fascinating, and how people dress and why. Um, but I also knew that I didn't really wanna do that. It was one of these things that, like, it was great to study. Then I moved into I, for a while, was a fashion writer. So again, kind of like not a designer, but like
Yeah.
related to it a little bit. But living in San Francisco Bay Area, it's like one of these things where I had to decide, do I want to be able to live here and pay rent and, be able to like go to a restaurant and eat and stuff, or do I want to do a creative venture? And it sucks so much that like that's a decision that so many people have to make,
Right. Yeah.
because it's like, and I mean getting ahead of myself, but like nothing would make me happier than like if being a quilter was like a career that kids knew about and was
Right.
like
Yeah.
something that you would have like health benefits and you could actually do. But
Yeah.
like, I was always just raised to be, well, be responsible, be able to provide for yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, I ended up, um, going into corporate, once I'd moved back to San Francisco, and still kind of related. I went to work for Levi's, so I was like, "Oh, an apparel company." But, like, and this would make anybody who's ever worked in corporate apparel laugh.
Mm.
But, like, I was so naive because I thought, "Oh, it's an apparel company, probably everybody knows how to sew." And it was like,
Mm.
"N no, that's not how it works." It's like everybody has, like, a business background. Um,
Oh.
but, like, I was there for 15 years, which I never intended to be, like, not like, I love the company, I love what I was doing,
Mhm.
but it was just that, like, the corporate environment, I think there's just I happen to be kind of obsessed with, like, personality tests and stuff, like
Mhm.
Myers-Briggs and all those
Mhm.
things,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think, like, the first time I read what mine was, one of the first things it said was, "Maybe not great in a corporate environment."
You're like, "Okay."
Yeah, it's like, well, I think I knew that, but, are you gonna pay my rent? Um,
Right, yeah.
but I've just always been a very, like, honest, straightforward, like, cut to the chase, no BS person, and I'm also, like, I just don't like, um I like being fair, and I like
Mhm,
being logical, and, like,
mhm,
the whole idea of, like, corporate politics and all of that stuff was just, like, never from day one, never sat with me, even though, I mean, from a amount of corporate or stringent rules, Levi's is probably one of the most relaxed, like, corporations, but still, it was just
it's
kind
still
of the
corporate.
yeah, but I learned, I mean, so thinking about kind of my relationship with textiles, I mean, growing up was about working with my hands, and when I was in college, it was about, like, learning about, what a dress from, like, 1876, how you would make the bodice, and all of
Mhm,
this stuff that was so, like, tactical and so, um, yeah, just, like, working with your hands, and then going into corporate was learning about kind of, like, the impact of textiles on, like, a global scale,
really
which I
sure.
have to say was really got tough after a
Mhm.
while. And like, because even though like, so denim specifically,
Yeah.
apparel in general, I'd never know all the right numbers, but I think it's like the number 3 most environmentally harmful industry in the
Yeah.
globe. And denim is really tough in that. And Levi's is at the absolute forefront from a sustainability standpoint, also like from how they treat their workers and like the rules they have, but it's still apparel. And
Right.
that's where it's like you can say, well, we're better than that, or we're not doing that, but it's still at the end of the day, like the amount of waste and
Yeah.
just kind of excess all of that creates, like, got really, really hard, I
Mhm.
think, for me to stomach. And again, being someone who I put like 150% of myself into everything. I mean, it's just talking about this with my therapist who's been very helpful, but like,
Yeah.
she's like, "You're not someone that can just kinda do something half-assed," and
Mhm.
that's, like, the understatement of the century. So,
Yeah.
I put my blood, sweat, and tears and everything into my job,
Yeah.
and then when first off, when your job is working for a corporation that's for profit and, it's just kind of, I think, this is how a lot of people, I would say, especially women, and this is just my experience, has been certain personality types are better, can exist better in the corporate world. If you can be a little bit more selfish, a little bit more looking out for yourself, asking
Mhm.
for what you need, all these things that are fairly normal things. But I think a lot of women maybe have a little bit of a harder time because of how they were raised, or just societal
Mhm.
pressure kind of doing these things. And I would for sure get um I was always seen as someone that was maybe a little too vocal, a little too honest,
Mhm.
where I think maybe if I'd been a guy, it would have been different. But
Yeah. Exactly.
I wasn't, I'll always say it was on me. Like, I didn't take good enough care of myself. I didn't put those boundaries there that I need to. And that's why I got severely burnt out.
Mhm.
So, and burnout is also kind of hard to talk about because so, I think people start like just throwing it around a lot. And you're like, but what is it really? Is it just saying, oh, well, I don't feel like working anymore? Not really.
It's like,
But it's, yeah. So,
yeah.
like, but I, especially during the pandemic, it
Mhm.
was really tough. And that's why I ended up leaving. And I had never, so this whole time of growing up with textiles and working in the textile industry and everything, I had never made a quilt. Quilts didn't even like, I don't know, I just, it wasn't like in my atmosphere, and no one that I was related to quilted that I knew of.
Really?
But my stepmom had always liked quilting, and during the pandemic, she started teaching one of my nieces how to sew, and that was so cool. Like, I kinda was, like, observing
Mhm.
and was teaching her how to quilt, and I was like, "Huh, that's," it's like, "Oh, okay." And I kid you not, like, on, I think the last day at my corporate job was, like, a Thursday or something, and that Monday, I hadn't planned to do it. I just walked into our 2nd bedroom, which was my home office, because of course, everybody was working from home,
Mhm.
and I just put all of my computer, everything in the closet, and I took back out my sewing machine, and I set it up into a sewing room, and I just started making a quilt,
Oh my gosh.
and then, like, I just didn't stop,
Yeah.
and that was, like, a year and a half ago.
Oh my gosh.
But part of the reason why I did that, and this is, like, one of the things I think so interesting, because I think a lot about, like, traditional quilting versus what we consider now modern quilting.
Mhm.
I made this first quilt out of only fabrics that were in my house, in my stash, and some of them were like two of the fabrics I used were these saris that I had from like the Hindu commune when I was, almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it was like I almost felt like, whoa, I'm like going back to when quilting was like take a shirt, take a
Yeah.
thing, and like almost build a story from these things. And that's why I was like, I think I was like, holy crap, quilting, where have you been all my life? It's like it's textiles, it's art with fabric. And like
Yeah.
that just kind of like blew my mind a little bit because I love apparel, I love fashion, I love like trend and understanding all of that.
Mhm.
But there's so many rules that are because like, well, it has to fit someone and it has to sit a certain way.
Right.
And to me, and I know probably a lot of people, I may say things that lots of people don't agree with, but like for me, there don't have to be any rules in quilting because you're just making this piece of art out of fabric.
Mhm.
And it was like so freeing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, it was I'm still it's I still like when I talk about it a year and a half later, am like so blown away by the fact that I found this and then the fact that I get to do it every day now.
Yeah.
And like the idea of having a business, I still was like, "What? You can't do that. That's not a thing."
Yeah.
But it kind of, as I was saying earlier about like the universe,
Mhm.
like things just kept pushing me in that direction and it just felt easy.
Mhm.
Like I would make something and it would work and I kept meeting all of like these great people on Instagram and TikTok and where I was like, you know, who meets people on social media? That's so strange and I'm such an introvert, but like it just felt so right.
Mhm.
Where when I thought about going back to corporate and I was looking at the job market, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, I mean, I'm in this place where I'm really trying to figure out like what my path is and how I'm going to move forward. But like I know what I love and what I'm passionate about and what I'm good at, and I'm like, this is my opportunity to try to make it into something.
Mhm.
And you don't get a lot of opportunities. And so
Yeah.
it just like every day it just brings me joy to know that I get the opportunity to do this.
Yeah. That's so that's like super inspiring too, because I mean, I came from not corporate necessarily, but being a teacher, and it's the same thing. It's like very strict rules, very strict environments of like how you have to proceed. And even though like responsible for all these things, I have to do it a certain way and all this stuff. It just feels very like very restricting, and that burnout, man, it's real and it is so hard to get out of it and stay in the job where you're burnt out from.
Yeah, I don't know that it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. And I actually tell you, I'm not a big like risk taker or a big like I never thought I would be an entrepreneur or whatever, but
Yeah.
like I wasn't it was almost impossible for me to leave, even though I knew because I still again I loved so much of what I did and
Right.
so much of it was rewarding, but another big thing was this like the expectations that are placed on you and what you think like success looks like.
Mhm.
And it's hard to 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 know what you want to do and are passionate about, but almost feel like you're not allowed because it's not responsible or
Right.
people are going to judge you.
Mhm.
And still to this day, oh my gosh, if I run into someone that I
Yeah.
used to work with, and I have to even begin to try to explain to them, like, what I'm doing, I just see this, like, horror
Yeah.
kind of go across their face, and some people not like, the designers I used to work with are like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, that's amazing, I wish I could do that all day."
Yeah.
But it's still I still feel like there's, like, a lot of judgment too,
Mhm.
and I think that would be the same for any I mean, I think being a teacher is such like a respected career and something that you have to put work into and it means something if you're a teacher. And I almost feel like w- the assumptions I think that people have around either artists
Mhm.
or I hate to say it, like crafters, like that's
Right.
such a terrible word
Yeah.
sometimes and how kind of people look at it. And
Mhm.
I do think that was also what was made like the transition harder
Mhm.
was caring too much, I think, what people would think.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really hard for me too. Just like, oh my gosh, I like have this degree and I have a master's degree, and then I'm just walking away from it. I'm like, who does that? And I was like, oh, I'm doing it. But it's like yeah, seeing people, they're like, oh my gosh, are you still teaching? I'm like, oh no, I own a quilting business. And they're like, oh, I'm like, don't
Uh-huh.
say it like that. Are you crazy? Like, it's hard, but it's the best thing that's ever happened. Like, yeah, just, and I think I even was talking about it in my last episode, just how sometimes I get in my own head still and I'm like, that's not businessy enough. It's not like professional sounding enough. But I think that's just, yeah, that societal pressure to seem like you're achieving all the time. And like, but I am achieving. I'm achieving my goals and my aspirations. And that's all that should matter. But it's really hard to quiet down those voices too. Like the external judgment. You're like, go away.
Yeah, oh no, everything you just said, I would say completely spot on. And that's why like again, I kind of joke about talking about this stuff with a therapist, but I do like I love my therapist and I do think that I don't know, there's a lot of it's if I take a step back, it kind of sounds so silly. Like I'm in such a privileged place to be able to say, "Oh, well, I'm worried that people are judging me because I get to sew all day." Like that
Right.
sounds like
I know.
kind of in my head I sound like an asshole.
Yeah.
But it is like, holy shit, I worked my butt off for so many years and
Mhm,
worked like such long hours so that I could save money so that I could afford to do this. And
mhm.
now I'm still worried. Like I
Right?
almost am not enjoying it as much as I know I could because I do worry about um other people's perceptions. I know, which is just so
Mm,
even saying it out loud sounds like so silly.
yeah. Right? But it's like it's still there, and I think as, creative business owners, I think it is a hill to climb because there is still so much there is judgment out there, and it sucks, but I think the more of us that get out there and talk about it, and the more we, like, build that camaraderie with each other, and not just like, only quilting, but all creative businesses, like the better chance we have of kind of fighting off that stigma of being like, oh, you're cute, you must just be a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, no, I'm far from it. But like, I always tell my husband, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm such a bad housewife. And he's like, well, you're not a housewife. I'm like, for a good reason. But
Yeah, I think like I think part of my kind of unique upbringing, I also like I mean, my husband and I have been together for 20 years, but I've always kind of been like the breadwinner. And it's
mm,
like it's just like I've my mom, if she listens to this, and she totally will because she's my number one fan,
aw,
will laugh at this, but like she's the one that raised me to be like, you're never rely on a man, you
yeah.
know? So like I've always been kind of like, oh, well, even if my husband was making a ton of money, like, which he wasn't, I have to be
Mhm,
responsible and I have to support myself and I have to like do all of these things. And
right.
yeah, it is like this is I feel like one of the first like risks I've really taken. And that's That's hard, but it's like I'm taking a risk on myself, which is
Right.
also really hard, where
Yeah.
everything I've always done in the past was for other people.
Hmm. Yeah.
And every, blood, sweat, and tear, and all of those hours and everything I did was for shareholders
Hmm.
or was
Right.
for an editor or was for someone else. And
Yeah.
I do think that's like a big thing too that I've started to notice is, especially with a lot of women and in this industry, it's like even when you're starting your own business, it's hard to put yourself first
Hmm.
and really focus on yourself and invest in yourself. And that's I'm still really having that issue where it's always everyone else comes first.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a hard one. And I think just, societally, women are expected to be doormats for everyone. And so, and, even in the corporate world, you were saying it's like, oh, if I was this way as a man, they probably would be like clapping you on the back and being like, oh, you're a go-getter. But as a woman, we're seen as obnoxious, or we're, we have too many feelings, or, you know, we're hormonal or whatever. There's always excuses for why we are the way we are, when, yeah, if a man had walked in and said the same exact thing, it would have been taken as like in high regard and been, seriously considered. And, you know, so, and it's that way in teaching too, which is crazy because there's so many more female teachers than male, but admin is mostly male, at least in my
Hmm.
experience. And so there's still that kind of like, I'm your boss, you better do what I say, little lady, and it's gross.
Y- yeah. How
So,
long have you been out of it for?
um, I can't even remember. I stopped at the end of the 2021 school year. So this will be my second full school year out.
So that is around because I left my job in August of 21.
Okay, so yeah, we're right in the same boat.
I feel like it should be I feel like it should be easier,
Yeah.
but that's not. Yeah. And then again, like I was working for one company for 15 years, which even I think that is so rare these days.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's tough. But then I
Yeah.
also I go as I've gotten more and more involved in the quilting world, I also though everybody's I found for the most part been super nice and accepting and
Mhm.
great, but I also don't know that I really fit in there
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
And I have found, and again, so I just want to like most women do, I'm going to caveat everything I'm going to say and apologize for it first before I say it. But like, I have very super strong opinions. I'm very passionate, but I'm passionate about what I do. Like, nothing I say is a judgment on other people. And
Sure.
like, that's even some of the stuff I post about really when I stop the most is like, I don't want people to think that I'm judging the way that they do things because
Mhm.
first off, I think anybody who quilts, who creates with their hands, who's doing this art form is amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's and again, one reason for leaving the corporate world is my goal is to in some way, shape, or form get more people into the arts, like
Mhm.
textile arts, and
Yeah.
try to help kind of educate people about why they probably don't want to buy something that only costs $10 because I know exactly why it costs $10.
Right. Yeah. It's
And I
cheap for a
know,
reason.
yeah, and I've been in the factories and I've seen that. And I saw, again, the best case. Again, I saw factories where people were treated really well, but like
Mhm.
one of the things that will stick with me for sure was 12, 13 years ago now when I went to Bangladesh
Mm.
with my work and just kind of being in this environment where the factory owners, like you'd go to the factories and the factory owners would be in these giant, almost like palatial estates. And then, but on the way there, you'd be driving in these SUVs with tinted windows and you'd be driving past like a box where someone lived. And like the people that worked there would share, there would be like 8 people that shared a one-bedroom apartment, and that was, like, actually great for them that I just like the way that and it's not that that exists because of the apparel industry, it's more that, like, there are yeah, there are reasons why, like, you can buy like, every pair of jeans is touched by someone's hand. Like, it's not all by machine. Like, it is people are there
Yeah.
with with, different tools to, like, make the abrasion and everything. And
Mhm.
if you think about, like, someone's time and the fact that, you can buy that for 20 bucks, I mean, it just tells you how much those people are getting paid and how much is happening kinda behind the scenes, and I understand that not everybody can afford to buy, like, a 200 pair of pants because it's
Right.
made in the US and it's made with regenerative cotton or whatever, but, like,
Right.
I just think that and I'm so going on the tangent, but it's just
Yeah.
something I'm super passionate about. It's like, I
Yeah.
think that we've kind of there's a little bit of lack of, like, conscientiousness or awareness, I
Y
think, of why certain things cost how much they do, and
yeah.
so long story short, the, like, wanting to be able to this idea of educating people of, like, why they should buy from local businesses or small companies or things that are handmade and
Mhm.
why yeah they could go to Target or Walmart and get something that's in the same category that costs a tenth of how much that costs, but why it is that costs that way.
Yeah.
And
What's the true cost?
yeah, and so, like, that whole piece of, like, why I kinda stayed, like, I thought quilting would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go visit quilting, and then I'll do something else," and it was like, "Oh, no, I've never that
Yeah.
I moved there, now I live there."
Yeah.
But, like, I'm still just trying to find, like, ways to or what I want to accomplish by being here and having a business is just to help more people, like, discover and it doesn't have to be quilting, but anything, like, discover the beauty and the value of making things and putting yourself into it, and whether it's, like, quilting as therapy or quilting as, gift giving or whatever it means to you.
Yeah.
Awesome if it's quilting as a business because that means you're just bringing more into the world.
Right.
Um, but, like, I think the thing that's been I'm almost using myself, I think, as, like, uh, it's an experiment where, um, what I really wanna do is help small artists, and
Mm.
that was something before I even got involved in quilting. What I really wanted to do, but I can't figure out how to afford it in the Bay Area, is to have some type of, like, artist collective
Mhm.
where there would be space where I could get like, people could rent out, like, studios and there or, depending on people's financial situation, there would be scholarships, but
Yeah.
where I would provide, like, a business component of it. Like, I
Yeah.
would be able to because that really is even though I was in product development and textiles and everything, what I was doing for the last 15 years was the business side. It was brand building and marketing and, like,
Yeah.
consumer insights and all that stuff that I think a lot of artists, like, you're not trained to know. And,
Mhm.
like, that's like, I would love to be able to help, um, help people kind of bring what they do to the forefront.
Yeah.
So, that's always been my goal versus more of, like, I don't need anyone to buy my stuff. Like, I don't need like, I have a of course, like 900 other people in the world, I'm writing quilt patterns, and I have one releasing, and but it's still, like, my goal is not to, like, have people reproduce my pattern, it's to, like, inspire people to connect with their creativity, and the thing that
Yeah.
would make me the most happy, and I even told this to some of my testers, but I think they didn't believe me, I was like, "This is the like, use this as a starting off point, but just do whatever you want."
Yeah.
'Cause, like, that's really my goal is just to connect more people,
Mhm.
um, to that, and I think to kind of maybe challenge some of what I consider, like, the rules of modern quilting.
Mhm.
'Cause I what I have found so interesting is there's a lot of, people talk about the quilt police and people talk about, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
how people used to do stuff and it's modern," but I almost find that there are just as many rules and the right and wrong way to do thing in what people consider modern quilting. It's just different.
Mhm.
It's just the rules are that you wait for your favorite pattern designer to release their pattern, and then are you a Riley Blake person or do you like Juicy Juice? It's like you have your do you do Tula Pink? And
Yeah.
then, what's their release? And again, like if that's awesome for people, but I
Yeah.
don't but it's not the only way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of where like the idea of how you I don't even I've never actually made a full quilt with quilting cotton
Really.
because I don't like quilting cotton. But coming from an apparel place where I'm used to like for me it's so tactile. It's
Mhm.
so like a lot of the fabrics I have are like cotton lawns or
Mm.
linen or blends where I'm really used to it being about how the fabric drapes, just because
Mm.
that's my background, and even
Yeah.
with like I love working with denim because of how denim ages and how it evolves, and so, like, since I mostly work from the fabric I have, I like I've bought some solids, but that's about it, and then I think, like, I started getting really confused when I hear people talk about, "Oh, well, we're gonna make a quilt out of wovens." I'm like, "But all this fabric is woven." Like,
Yeah.
it that kinda like, confused me for a while, but finally understanding, it took me a minute to be like, "Oh, I get it." So, quilting cotton kind of exists because of these rules of quilting where you wanna get these perfect, points.
Mhm.
And that's easier to do if you have, like, slightly denser, stiffer, like, tightly woven fabric, and,
Yeah.
again, it's like, I think all those quilts are beautiful, but I also think that you can thrift fabric, and you can do things that and get amazing, beautiful results that are just maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so that's kinda also what I am focused on or, like, kind of passionate about is just again, it's not about judging people for liking Tula Pink. I mean,
Yeah.
awesome, like, her stuff's amazing, and I
Yeah.
so respect her for, like, what she's done.
Mhm.
It's more just, like, if you don't necessarily just wanna do that, you can still have this amazing experience, and
Yeah.
yes, there's definitely people out there like Zach Foster and stuff who are, like, so fully doing these things, but also sometimes there's, like, a lot of different extremes,
Mhm.
and it's like, for someone kind of coming into it, I think it can be a little bit overwhelming maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because you feel like you have to keep up on all the trends and you have to, "Oh, now this release, okay, I need to make that and I need to get that fabric and I need to do all these things." And it is overwhelming, and just the amount of fabric that is just being put into the world is like, oh my gosh. Like, and what it
Yeah.
does it go, you know? And so I have so much respect for people who upcycle and who quilt with what they have and thrift stuff, thrift fabrics and find different ways to incorporate things that already exist into their quilts so there's not perpetuating, the textile waste. And it's hard because I do love so many fabrics and stuff, but
And
it's
when it comes down to it though, it's like that's what for me, it makes me so much happier to hear that
Mhm.
someone loves fabric and wants to make. Like that's what's important to
Yeah,
me, more
yeah,
than, oh, but I'm using like a mass produced fabric. It's like,
right,
okay.
right.
But that's also why like I get uncomfortable like saying, even calling myself sustainable or anything like that, because I think that can go, you're almost putting like an ideal out there that's impossible to do. Like I've been
Sure.
trying to create some zero waste bag patterns,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I can get pretty close, but I actual true zero waste, like it's really freaking hard. And
Yeah.
I do like think sometimes that happens too, is you think like to be sustainable or to be this and I have to do all of these things or I failed. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, maybe there's like a couple little things you could do or a new
Right,
way to approach something or a different place you could look to buy something. But
right.
at the end of the day, it's about like there needs to be more joy in our world. That sounded so
Mhm.
cheesy, but
No, I
like
agree.
I do think that one way to get there is through art and through kind of handmade and textiles and people being able to discover just like what's possible there.
Yeah, yeah. When, like, part of what our business does is, we make quilts for people. So, and we make so many like memory quilts or just like keepsakes that, oh, can you make a quilt out of all my baby's clothes that I saved? And people send us clothing items and we create quilts out of them and lots of t-shirt quilts and all that. And so that feels like really cool of incorporating, fun newer fabrics with, you know, these clothing items to kind of bring everything together. And that's been a super fun adventure, just trying to figure out how to make the different fabrics work together. And like, can I actually make this pattern using these different, types of fabrics and, t-shirt cotton versus, taffeta from a like little girl's dress with her pajamas and like just all these different textures and styles and weaves of fabric. You're like, okay. So that's been really fun because I think when you work in different mediums besides just quilting cotton, you have to learn a lot of different skills.
Mm.
And because each fabric is so different and you have to treat it so differently. You can't just sew a jersey knit to denim or fleece or
Yeah.
flannel. And so that's been like a really cool eye-opening part of doing this as a, you know, for other people, just like, okay, I said I would make them a quilt, so I gotta make this work. you know.
Yeah, and then thinking about, I mean, that's awesome, the ability to like bring together new and old. And
Hmm.
I also, I mean, even that first quilt that I made using
Yeah.
fabrics from my childhood, I also had fabric I'd maybe bought a year or two before. So it wasn't, but it just all these different things representing different parts of someone's life and like that getting to be an heirloom
Yeah.
and something they hold on to, I think is, I mean, preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but like that's kind of what I think is so amazing about quilting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting talking about like knowing other fabrics and stuff because
Hmm.
I've been like looking out to see if for other like seamstresses turned quilters because it's been so interesting, like, I'm almost having to retrain my brain
Yeah.
because of the rules of apparel
Yeah.
versus quilting, and even just so sometimes I feel like I have such a leg up, and
Mm.
I don't follow other patterns. I can just see something and I just know how to make it.
Yeah.
But then, like, I think of the first quilt I made. Now I know that there was half square triangles and flying geese in it. I made them by literally cutting out triangles and sewing them
Oh my
together,
gosh.
like, because
Yeah.
I didn't know what any of that was, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And I would draw, like, this is still to this day, like, it's so strange for me to think about seam allowances as being, like, what you cut to
Uh-huh.
versus you cutting a pattern shape and then attaching that pattern to where it attaches versus this idea that you're adding a quarter inch to everything and then hoping that you are really paying attention so that you're sewing a quarter inch in and it matches up. And
Yeah.
so that's also like it's been so fascinating because I'm both still a very new and inexperienced quilter, and
Mhm.
at the same time, I know more about fabric and textiles and sewing than most people, so it's like I find myself kind of in this weird place all the time, but I I love to learn, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what's been another just awesome thing is like
Mhm.
and anytime, I mean, it's almost a problem. And what I kind of want to know, since we've both been kind of in this now the same amount of time, is
Yeah.
I still am so excited to be in this place and to get to make something.
Mhm.
Anytime I see something someone else makes, I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to make that. I want to
Uh-huh.
learn how they're doing that. I want to do it. And so, like, staying focused
Mhm.
100% is my biggest problem because I'm just so excited to learn and do and everything.
Yeah. That is tricky for sure, and I don't think that ever goes away, honestly. I've been quilting for, about 6 years, and then I learned how to long arm 5
Mm,
years ago, and then a year after that is when we my mom and I bought our machine and kind of started our business. And so she's been kind of running it mostly, while I was still teaching. And then I just got to the point where I was like, I need out of here and I've got my business. So why not give that a shot? But so she came from like sewing apparel and everything else, being kind of a seamstress in that. She's sewn since she was really little. And then I came at it like she tried to teach me to sew when I was a kid, and I just like, no, thank you. And I just had so much anxiety around like I didn't want to break her machine and like I didn't want to
mm,
mess up what I was doing. And so I just couldn't, my like little anxiety brain couldn't handle it. But so then when my friends forced me to learn how to make a quilt, um, and then kind of brought that in. It was like I was coming at it from a different angle than how she had learned and what her experience was. And so even still, like she has all this knowledge, like you with different fabrics and different styles of sewing and approaching patterns so differently. And she's like you, can she can see something and she just knows how to make it. And I'm like, what the hell? Are you crazy? Like, I don't understand how she does that. Like, it takes a lot more work for me to get to that point of being able to see something and understand how it was made. But so I've been learning a lot from her too. But that desire to make new stuff that like we see other people making, it hasn't gone away from me. It's like kind of gotten worse. Like the more skills I build and the more confident I get in what I'm doing, the more I'm like, "Pff,
mm.
I can make that." So
Yeah. I mean, that's like you say long arm, and I'm like, oh, because my first quilt, this is again, I look back and I'm like, was I out of my mind? I decided that I was going to do like free motion,
Mm,
like quilt the entire quilt top, not using any type of just making up my own like stencils and everything.
yeah,
And I'd never you don't free motion in apparel, like,
yeah.
so it was completely new to me, but I'm like, I had read probably one blog post that's like, "Oh, that's what you do." And I was like, "Okay, great. I can do this. But
Yeah.
now I think I still use I've never used a long arm. I really
Mm,
want to, but I use my home machine, but I do more like I'll do straighter line. Like I
yeah.
haven't been doing that as much, but again, it was amazing to try.
Yeah.
But it is that's like this whole world
Mhm.
of things that just waiting to kind of do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun, and I just I don't know. I'm like you. I just want to see people like living out their passion and making what they want to make, screw the rules. Like I think there's some rules that should be followed just for the sake of your own sanity, but like for the most part, like make it how you want to make it, approach it how you want to approach it. And if you find a pattern writer that you love and you can flow with their writing style, then do that. Or if you love just trying to figure out how to make stuff on your own, then do that too. Like our lives are too short and there is too much out there for us to like stick ourselves in a box and say, I can only do things this one way, or I'm not a real quilter, or I'm not a real sewist, or whatever that is. Like, we have to stop gaslighting ourselves and we have to stop, like, yeah, just boxing ourselves in when there are literally limitless possibilities in this existence. Like, why would you stop at that when you could try something different or push yourself a little farther if that's what you want? And if you don't, if you're happy in your box, then be in your box. That's okay too. Like,
Yeah.
I think we have
Yeah,
to.
no, and I mean, even I still however far I've kind of come on this journey, I still do that. Like I still said,
Mhm.
like I don't see myself as an artist. I see myself as someone who helps other artists.
Mm,
I know I'm really creative. I know I'm like artistic, but it's just yeah, I think there's some things that are kind of ingrained in either how we were raised or whatever that says like no, like this is how you're allowed to be or perceived
yeah.
and your reality and I do, but then I get so surprised anytime I see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever someone say like, "Oh gosh, I was always scared to try quilting," or
Hmm.
I like don't see myself as a quilter. I'm like, "But you're doing it.
But
Like
you're
just
doing
put
it.
two pieces of paper together, you're doing it." Or
Yeah.
paper, fabric. And but then I think we're all it's another thing I've learned. I am really great at helping other people and giving advice to other people and
Mhm.
using my knowledge. And when
Yeah.
it comes to giving it to myself, it is a completely different like thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, which I
Yeah.
think is fairly normal. But
Yeah.
it has been something I've been so happy and again didn't know this community existed, but the amount of knowledge and people's kind of willingness to share in the
Hmm.
quilting community, I think is so awesome.
Yeah.
And just wanting to kind of either share what they're doing or share how they do things or ideas and
Hmm.
finding kind of these little different communities
Hmm.
has been just really awesome and
Yeah.
is something that I feel is so different. Again, I think corporate world, and I'm not sure about education, but I had many close friends, but and also for a woman, it was kind of like sometimes you felt pitted against each other, or you felt like um, the way that someone would succeed would be by pushing someone else down.
Yeah.
And like that also was always so like anti to how I wanted to live my life. And
Mhm.
um but I think that's where there's pros and cons. And I do think something you said a minute ago about life's too short and try lots of things. I am still so grateful that I went the route I went to,
Mhm.
even though I knew I always wanted to come back to somewhere creative, but I do think that there's a lot of reason to try different paths and to go
Mhm.
down them and because you're going to learn really different things. The
Yeah.
experiences I had working for Levi's, even just like the travel I got to do and the places I got to see, I never would have been able to do that on my own.
Right.
And whether I ever use, whether I ever need to tell someone if like one denim is a half an ounce lighter or out of a shade band than another denim, like I may never use that information again ever. I really hope I don't. But like it was still, I think the things that you just learn about um, people and how they interact and consumers and how they buy and
Mhm.
everything is just invaluable.
Yeah.
And so I do like I try, even though I talk about leaving corporate and being super burnt out, and I want
Yeah.
to help everybody find their passion and find their creative.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it's all bad or that
Right.
you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I would assume the same. I'm sure like you probably learned so much in teaching and in education
Mhm.
and that masters, even if you're not, I mean, I'm actually now using my costume design degree more than I did for
Right?
so many years, but I just
Yeah.
think that there's reasons like people should never regret.
Yeah.
I think the different paths they go down, but when you're ready to go to a
Mhm.
new path, it's like take that leap.
Yeah. And you get to take that learning and that knowledge and that experience with you. Like you're not taking an uneducated risk. You are coming from a place of experience and you're just trying something new with those experiences. I'm like, I have to remember that too because like, yeah, I may not be teaching in a classroom and I may not be, you know, using my educational technology degree, but like the fact that I even got a college degree is a miracle. The fact that I taught for so long and the fact that I got to teach in like a STEM summer camp, and that's what really prompted me to actually get a STEM master's degree in the first place. Like I could never have predicted that path for myself, but I gained so much confidence from it. And that confidence is what allowed me to take this leap into doing this quilting business and to bringing my face onto this stinking podcast and talking to the people that it inspired that crap out of me. Like the people I'm talking to and that I'm like watching and learning from keep me so motivated to keep on this path right now because who knows what it's going to look like 5 or 10 years down the road if I'm open to those experiences. And I think you're exactly right. Like whatever path you're on is great. Just like keep going and keep choosing your passion over like fear of the unknown
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's fair. And like, so my
yeah.
business brain, though, when I hear you go through that, I'm like, I mean, you are set up to like teach about quilting. I mean, like,
Mhm.
that's where all these different things that people learn. I mean, if you have a science background or a math background, like, hi, there's unfortunately for me, lots of math and quilting.
Yeah.
I do think there's different ways to bring these kind of different things to life,
Yeah.
even if your career was very different. And
Yeah.
I think that's also a really good way to help someone who is a little bit more fearful, a little bit worried about taking a risk is like, how do you kind of connect what you used to be doing
Mhm.
with what you want to be doing and how do you kind of take
Yeah.
baby steps to get there?
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I have to say like you are like to start a podcast and to have your face and speak to people. I mean, that's like super brave and that's something that so many people like would probably want to do, but
Yeah.
not think that they could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a learning curve for sure, but I'm having so much fun. So I'm just like, well, I'm gonna just keep trucking along and see what happens. But, you know, it's and it has been really it's been really cool. But and I learned so much. And then it's like I'm like you. I'm like, oh, I want to help people get their voice out there and get their perspective on quilting or the creative community out there because I'm in that boat. I want to help people. I love that in my business. I get to help people create what they the quilt of their dreams, and whether it's a memory quilt or a keepsake or it's a wedding gift or whatever, helping them do something that they maybe don't have the ability to do for themselves. And it just feels really special, like, to think people all across this country have our quilts, and like even in Canada, it's like that's so crazy. But I don't know, it's
Yeah.
really fun. But I do admire that, like, you were able to just take that risk on yourself and bet on yourself and lean back into the creative side of your passion. And um I just think, yeah, speaking out more about it is really important to inspire more people and make it more okay. And like, you're okay. You're gonna be okay. Like, I'm okay, you're okay, everybody's okay.
Yeah. I tell my anxiety that
Yeah,
all the time.
me too. It's
Right
a
there with you.
it's a daily, like, looking in the
Yeah.
mirror, we're okay, everything's great. This is gonna be a great day.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I'm
But and
surprised, or sorry, can we go back just like,
yeah.
because you mentioned growing up in that commune, and I'm
Mhm.
surprised that there wasn't more quilting. Like, I guess, how was that with the
So
sewing thing?
this is kind of the cool thing is that there I don't think there was quilting, but there was like weaving. Like, I mean,
Okay.
we're like going back, we're going before the quilting part to actually like I remember using, oh my God, like a spinning wheel
Yeah.
as a little kid, like because there was sheep there and goats and like I think my mom was I don't think was as involved in that, but I remember kind of talking to people who were saying that yeah, they were the ones that would like actually spin wool and like there was a lot of people really and dye wool and all these things that are like super cool. This is the problem though, is I left there when I was 11
Okay.
and it was the early 90s. And let's just say that it what in the early 90s,
Hmm.
there was not a natural makers movement going on where any of this stuff was cool at all. In fact, it was like we moved to a town kind of near where we were, but that was a lot um, like a normal town. I went into like normal school and I was just so embarrassed of
Oh.
like now it's the coolest thing in the world and like
Hmm.
but I was also a vegetarian. I'd never eaten meat my entire life. It's like how I was raised and
Wow.
my name, I mean, never met any like Radha is a Hindu name and like
Mm.
of course no one could pronounce it. And now like all the kids have crazy names, but like not back then.
Yeah.
So I think like I anything that kind of had to do with that
Hmm.
past, I also like kind of didn't want to have anything to do with
Sure.
because it was just weird. It was not cool.
Yeah.
And it's like now or and even, later like after college when I started to be like, "Oh, actually, the fact that like there was giant bread ovens and they baked fresh like sourdough bread every day and like everything that like hipsters in Brooklyn do." It was
Right.
kind of like but really like
Yeah.
that was my childhood. So cool, but I
Yeah.
was just like, "Oh my god, I don't
Yeah.
this is like so embarrassing." Like as
Yeah.
most kids do.
Sure. Sure.
So there could have been like quilting or other there definitely was making your own clothes like
Yeah.
and that was like a lot of that type of thing and again a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sewing and
Mm-hmm.
weaving and yarn and stuff
Yeah.
but yeah it's every time I talk about it it's so strange because I feel like that's where I came from. Like I look at pictures of myself when I'm like really little and I'm wearing some clothes that my mom made and like I'm like such a like little hippie child
Yeah.
and I went like as far away as I could
Right.
to well actually move to London for a little bit, which was as far away as I could get. But which is where I found Liberty London, so that's kind of like
Mm.
these fabrics
Mhm.
through my life, like, even though I don't Liberty is not as much my style anymore, it's still a
Right.
fabric that I just have such a I made my wedding dress out of it, like, I
Oh
have
my
such a,
gosh.
like, emotional connection to.
Yeah, there's
I
some
love
nostalgia
fabric.
there. Yeah.
But, I went to this super corporate world, like, to get as far away from that, and now it's like I'm back in a place where I kinda wish I lived on a farm, and I wish that I had some sheep and I knew how to, like, make my own yard and stuff.
You're like, "Shit,
That
been
would
there,
be
done
really
that."
cool. I definitely tried to bake all my own sourdough bread, and that kind of went okay during pandemic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is I think so you were saying and I had actually listened to your I listened to that first episode, I think, that you were talking about how you started, and I do
Mhm.
think it's interesting where, like, half the people, their parents taught them how to sew when they were little or quilt,
Yeah.
and the other half were like, "Well, I want nothing to do with that
Yeah.
because my parents are doing that." And then you
Yeah.
find out, like, 20 years later, "Oh, wait, that's actually kinda cool."
Yeah, like, "Oh, huh."
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, like I think it's just a funny thing because yeah, you either embrace it or you run from it and then eventually embrace it, but that's that's so f it's just, like, I love hearing about people's backgrounds and, like, where they came from because I just think it's so interesting, like, everything you experience and just how it ends up shaping you, and that's like, growing up on I'm like, "A commune, that's fun." Like, I was homeschooled, and so I kinda lived a little bit grew up a little differently too, and, definitely had a my mom stayed home with us, and so, we had a lot of homemade stuff as well, and because she was always sewing, like, she'd make our clothing too for a little while and would just but she'd, like, make us fun stuff too, like, I always had dress up clothes and doll clothes and but it's just I was always reliant on her to make those things for me, but I could never get myself to, like, do that. I did crochet for a long time, and that was something that I was able to be okay with, but I don't know, for some reason, sewing took me a long time to get to, but yeah, it's just kind of funny how those things go because it's like, it's always been there, but
Yeah. And but, like, again, I say, like, I took such a weird circular route,
Mhm,
but and even though there were times, like, when I was at my most burnt out, like, really even 2 years before I left my job, like
mhm.
and I was very unhappy, like, I still don't regret, like, the road that that took because I know that I was able to learn from it, and I do
Yeah,
think that that's so important, especially those of us that are, like, a little more, like, emotional and passionate and, like,
yeah,
wanna find meaning in everything is, like, I
yeah,
do think it's important to realize that you might have taken a really strange path somewhere, but you are where you are,
mhm.
and it's not too late to start anything.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not wrong either. I think it's like, "Oh, I made the wrong choice." It's like, you made a choice, it doesn't mean it was right or wrong, it just was a choice, and, like, what can you learn from that? And then you take it and move on or you stay in it if that's the choice that feels right for you, but I think, yeah, there's just so many different ways to get into it, and yeah, it's never too late, you can start right now, and I always say I'm a huge proponent of people starting where they're at and like I'm in support of whatever stage you're at, whatever however people want to get into it. Like I'm always open to, answering questions or being a support system for people as they're learning or whatever. But and like because I don't have all the answers either, but I just know it worked for me and I'm a good cheerleader and
Mm.
I'll talk you off a ledge if you're not sure what's going on with your quilt, but it's like, yeah, I really I want more people involved and I want to see more people making things in the way that makes sense to them and for their life and experience and makes the most sense for how they want their experience to be because I think that's the coolest part about it too is that we all get to architect our own experience and so the more the more choices you realize that you do have, the more free you become, and like, to me, that's real freedom is when you can realize just how many options there are for you out there.
Absolutely, and I think that's kind of my like, the reason why I've started to push more and I'm gonna be talking more and sharing more about,
Mhm.
like, alternatives, not because I don't think that currently stuff is good, it's just, like, there are so many other options, and
Right.
what makes something great is I believe what makes a country great is different perspectives and people from different places and different ideas and different backgrounds. And
Mhm.
the minute that we're all doing things the same ways, the minute that it's boring and no one's getting challenged. And
Mhm.
I love a good challenge. I love another thing that as a woman or in general in corporate you're not supposed to do is challenge everything.
Yeah.
But like if I love to debate, I love to change my mind because it
Mhm.
means that I've learned something new.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where and I do think that exists in the quilting world, but I do when you teach someone how to do something, it's like you can teach them how to get a certain result that they want, but you're not saying that that's the only way or the right way to do it. You're just
Right.
showing them how to get a certain result, which is great. But
Yeah.
it's like showing people that there are so many different ways that they
Mhm.
can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, this is just how I do it, but there's so, yeah, you can do it in so many different ways. And it's like, even just all, sewing side by side with my mom, like, we just do things just slightly differently. And it's like, I can tell when she's done something or when I've done something. And not because it's just so different, but just because I know her style. And it's like, it's just, it's just like not even silly per se, but just like so incredible that we can just be sewing right next to each other and be giving each other input and be working on, you know, similar projects and still get something that still has our own unique stamp on it. So
Yeah.
it's
And that's why I love mistakes. And that's why
yes.
like I'm someone who like I don't like a perfect whatever that means quilt because
Yeah.
to me those little moments and there's my stepmom has the most beautiful it's this giant white and blue vintage quilt on a wall in her and my
Oh,
dad's house and I don't know how old it is, uh, but it's I don't remember if she got it from someone in her family, but it's all completely hand done. It's beautiful, has like scalloped edges. It's
oh
just
my
blue and
gosh.
white, which blue and white is like my kryptonite. Like if I see anything blue and white, I'm like, oh, that's for me. It just is. Um, but the most amazing parts of it are where like things don't line up or where
Mhm.
you can see that like they had to like go back and restitch something or change
Mhm.
something. It just is like so human.
Right. Yeah.
And again, that's I think my from going to from this world where every your part of your job is making sure that every single unit of this one product looks exactly the same because that's what you're delivering and
Right.
that idea of mass production
Mhm.
to this world where like the point is for it to look human the point
Mhm.
is for it to look unique and
Yeah.
I just find so much joy in that.
Yeah. I agree. And I think too, because I am kind of teaching, like I do teach some long arming classes at the local quilt shop. And when I'm teaching them how to do the paper pantographs, they're like, oh, it's so wobbly. I'm like, yeah, and that's you. Like, that's not the printed design that you're following. That's you. That's like your handwriting. And so any little mistake, any little wobble, like the humanness of who you are is now in that quilt. And that is beautiful. Like, I talk them up so much because I'm with you. Like, I want to see the humanness of it. Like, it isn't a mass-produced factory made thing. You made it with your hands. And like, stop seeking perfection because you're never going to find it and you're just going to hate yourself for it. And that is not what this is
Yeah.
about. So,
Yes. And we all have been there as well and
mhm,
understand that also.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so cool. And I think with your work, just seeing like it's all so creative looking and nothing looks exactly the same. And I freaking love it. I'm just like mesmerized. I'm like scrolling through all your pictures and I just think it's so fun.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm laughing because it's like this is where my business brain goes. So these are the things you need to do to have a successful business,
Hmm.
which are have a distinct look, do all these.
Yeah.
And my creative brain is like, I listened to you for 15 years. You go away. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna literally like vomit ideas out of my head right now.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
like, yeah. Oh, it's almost a problem where I'm like, "Hold on. Again,
Yeah.
it's been a year and a half. Can you calm down for just a second?
No.
Stop randomly in the middle of the night deciding that you have to, like, make this certain crazy thing, and then, like, you don't eat lunch or dinner because you're, like, having to get it out."
Hmm. Yeah. But I think that's the freedom side of owning your own business and being an entrepreneur, running things yourself is you're not beholden to anybody else's expectations of you, just your own. And it's like it can be so crippling, but it also can be so freeing at the same time. It just depends on the
Yeah.
day. But
Yeah.
I think too, it like encourages other people, like you're saying, you want to help other makers. And I think it does help seeing that you've done it and you've put yourself out there, I think can give other people the courage and the strength to try it themselves. And, well, I have been wanting to make that one thing and it felt kind of weird, but I'm going to just go for it. And, you never know what comes from that. But I think, yeah, the more people put their own stuff out there, that's not just the same cookie cutter quilt that everybody else is making. And although I do love seeing like tester parades of new patterns because I think it's so fun to see the quilt patterns in different colorways and just other people's perspectives on them, and it's always so inspiring. But
I'm So I think, okay, something you just said really resonated, and that was the when you're kind of your own boss,
mhm,
it's very freeing. And I don't know if other people, I think what I'm realizing is it's almost been over, like the freedom. I still have to figure out how to have that freedom
yeah,
because my life was so structured
yeah,
for so many years. And I mean, all I did was work, and everything was my work calendar was my like, it was my reality, it was my life, and leaving that, like, I've always thought I was a very organized and on top
mhm,
of things person, but having that moment of going from, and again, I think it's part of, like, I owed I worked for and owed myself to someone else, and
right,
I was responsible for delivering to someone else, and
right,
I am good at that. If it's I'm gonna do something for someone else, it is gonna be perfect, and it's
mhm,
gonna be on time. And then this transition, and I get talked about this a little bit before, but the transition to kind of owing yourself and being
mhm,
responsible to yourself is like, it's amazing, but it is crippling.
yeah,
It's this kind of, "But wait, I can do whatever I want?"
mhm,
Even the writing out a calendar for myself was one of the hardest things
yeah,
I've had to do, and, like, that's why I'm part of, like, a well, accountability group, whatever, like, on the business side is because 'cause I'm like, all these things I thought I was really good at or I was good at doing for other people,
yeah,
I I can't do them for myself. And,
yeah,
like, learning how to exercise that muscle or understand that you're allowed to kind of like you're just as important, and
Yes.
you need to put kind of that same type of um energy and diligence and everything
Mhm.
into something for yourself. I think
Mhm.
it's still just so uncomfortable
It really
for
is.
me.
Oh, yeah, me too. I think that's, you know, that's kinda where I struggle the most is, like, no, I get to be my own boss, and that's really freeing, but the crippling part is that I have to make all the decisions, and I have to not all the decisions because I obviously share that with my mom, but I think we're both just kinda like, "I don't know, I like, we'll just kinda wing it, I guess," and yeah, coming from that super structured environment of, like, having to have lesson plans for every single day and everything prepped and everything ready to go and, being beholden to my, the parents and my admin and all these things and my other my teaching partners and all that stuff, but then to go from that into an environment where I'm at my parents' house every day and we're sewing and we're the bosses, it's kinda like, "Oh, shoot, like, how do I do this?" And
Yeah, I
sticking to a schedule for myself is, like, way harder than I thought it was gonna be, but
absolutely. And then do you do the thing where I now just can't stop working. So
yeah.
I am like I am not allowed to have a day off in the evening. I now work 24 hours a day. So probably not the best idea if you have like boundary issues.
Yeah, that was a
And you knew
learning
that in
curve.
corporate world
Yeah,
to then start your own business because there really are no boundaries. But
yeah,
that's something I'm trying to figure out is like I don't want to get burnt out in this space
right.
because this is this amazing, happy, joyful, I love what I'm doing,
Mhm.
but I can almost see that happening
Yeah,
because it's like I don't quite know how to exist as me
yeah. Yes, I was gonna
in this
say
new way.
yeah, I was gonna ask you how that was because I think for me, and again, my experience, like my personality was teacher. And so I think I was trying to find a way to make quilter my personality. And I was,
Mhm.
yeah, just kind of feeling that pressure to like be there all the time and be there from like, 8 to 5 or whatever, 9 to 6, and not taking really any breaks. And but then at the same time, I'd be like, "Oh, I can do whatever I want," but then I'd feel so guilty and just I had to really and I'm still working on it because good grief, is it hard, but I have to learn who the heck I even am. And, I think when you are in that more strict corporate kind of environment, you are your job, and when you're outside of it and you're kind of breaking the mold a little bit as an entrepreneur or you're trying to kind of even though I hate late stage capitalism, I'm also like going to learn how to make it work for me and
Yep,
because it's happening in my
absolutely.
existence and I have to
Yep.
live. But so it's like you're almost going against the grain a little, but then you also have to really know who you are to make that work. And Jesus Christ, it is so hard. I'm just like,
I
who am I?
I think I think I may have actually said those words again to my therapist very
Mhm,
recently because I used to be yes, I would work all the time in that job, but I
mhm.
still had a different I was there was work Radha and then there was outside Radha. And
Yeah.
work Radha was very outspoken and very confident and very like you'd probably think I was an extrovert, was not at all.
Mhm.
Um, very opinionated and challenging. And and still like I still like thought about people's opinions and being empathetic and all these things that I was there too. But
Sure.
outside of work, I was just a lot quieter and more reserved and more private.
Mhm.
And now, and especially like I've never in my life had a public social media account until over the summer. I was never on TikTok. Like I had Instagram, but just for my friends. And it
Mhm.
was almost like a pride point of how few friends I had on Facebook
You're
or
like, "I'd have
Instagram.
12."
Yeah, and I would make this rule that, like, if I work with someone, I couldn't be, like, friends with them on social media and stuff,
Mm,
and it's been the weirdest thing because people that I know, now known for many years, when they, like, see me on maybe Instagram, they're
mhm,
like, "You're" they're, like, surprised
mhm,
because that's not I think that's almost more like work me
mhm.
coming out, and it's the same person, and it's still 100% authentically me,
Right.
but I'm always thinking about, like, who am I?
Yeah.
And how honest and open, you know, am should I be? And, like, where is that boundary?
Mhm.
Um, and I haven't figured that out yet at all,
Yeah.
and
That
it's
balance is
hard.
really hard. I'm like, I struggle with it too because 'cause I'm like, how much do I share and how much do people actually wanna hear? And it's a balance on here too, like, am I talking too much? Am I not talking enough? Like, am I asking good questions? Do people even care about what I'm saying? It's like, it's just it's all
Yeah,
finding that I think I think social media in and of itself is I mean, I think it's a hot topic for a lot of people, but I think
yeah,
we have not discovered the full potential of how amazing it can be because we're dumb humans and our brains are tiny sometimes, and we don't give ourselves enough time to really understand the impact of something before we fully implement it in our lives and make it like this hot new thing. And so I think there's still a lot more evolution to come with social media, but I also think it's such a powerful thing. It's a huge connection point for so many people and for learning so many things. And but yeah, it's like, who am I in this space and what do I bring to the platform that is beneficial for people and not
yeah.
just being like, look
Every
how my new dress is. I don't know.
Probably every 3 to 4 days, I have an existential crisis
Yeah.
about, like, I just spent an hour making a video that I'm gonna post on TikTok or Instagram to some weird words that someone recorded, and, like,
Mhm.
what the and does someone actually gonna wanna watch this? And
Mhm.
it is completely bonkers, but
Yeah.
on the flip side, this is where because and I'm a very, like, I like to look at the big picture, I like to look at all sides of things. Um, what social media has done for artists, and
Mhm.
I will say there's plenty of talking about how, you're kinda selling your soul or you're having to make stupid videos about your art or whatever. But when I when I graduated college, there wasn't like this wasn't an option to be able to
Mm.
show your creations online and potentially make a business out of it or meet other people. Like it didn't exist. And so that's
Right.
what I do think that um like what these social media platforms, the opportunity that they've put out there,
Yeah.
if you can figure out the way to do it that's authentic to you,
Mhm.
is huge and gives people who are artists or creatives a way to reach people
Yeah.
and connect with people. That is just amazing.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, it's, all the things that people talk about and being addicted to it. And like,
Yeah.
I have seen it be a bit of like an echo chamber when
Mm.
someone wants to like get an idea in their head and then they kind of get there and of course their followers are going to agree with them. And then I think
Right.
people talk about having conversations about important things on social media, and that's what I don't think you can do. I think
Yeah.
you can show pretty things and you can inspire people and you can find people, but I do believe to actually have like meaningful conversations and
Yeah.
that's not the
Discourse.
place
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because it's not necessarily real time, you can present an idea, but then it's like you just have to wait. And if you're looking for meaningful interaction and meaningful discourse, it's kind of like, yeah, that texting or typing back and forth. And it's like you miss all the body language, you miss the nuance, you miss the nonverbal cues, and I think that is a place where it is lacking still. And so as powerful as it can be, I still think, yeah, there's still so much more we need to learn. But I think, yeah, I agree with you as far as makers go. Like now we have this really cool way to get our makes out there and to show people what we're doing and how we're doing it, and that it's not just a simple little thing. And when you're commissioning a custom piece of work from somebody, it's not the same, just like we were talking about. The same as going to Target and picking it up off the shelf where it was created in like a sweatshop or some factory where people get paid 50 cents a day to make these things in mass. So you're going to have the same thing that, you know, thousands of other people are going to have. And I'm guilty. I'm wearing a Target sweater right now, but you know,
No,
it's
for
like,
sure. And like I will talk, mad shit about Amazon all day long, but you can bet that like when like my Kleenex runs out, I'm probably going to order some from there. And
yeah,
that is why like I caveat a lot of things I say, or I've
yeah,
said a lot on here about not wanting to be too extreme about anything
sure.
because I see my own flaws and I
Right.
know that I'm just a human.
Right. And we
And
have to
that's
live
where
in this
like,
world too.
yeah. And there that is also where I think it can get crippling to try to be so far in one direction where we're
Mhm.
like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
But like I've been thinking a lot and actually just decided, and this is going to sound more extreme than it is, but I decided for the next 6 months, I'm not going to buy any new fabric.
Yeah.
And but it's actually that's pretty easy for me to do because I have so much. And
Mhm.
also in the Bay Area, there are some of the most amazing resources for buying fabric secondhand.
Yeah.
There's like a couple different there's a giant design industry district here, and there's one place south of the city that like basically gets, and all these are nonprofits, but gets all of kind of the cast offs or samples or everything of fabric. And there's a place in San Francisco that I had to stop myself going to because I buy too much stuff there, which is like a creative reuse
Oh,
nonprofit. They do arts education. Um, they're amazing. And like they have fabric. And so it's like, it's really easy. Like if I need something for me to find it secondhand, and
yeah.
this isn't me going to the Goodwill and getting a shirt and cutting it apart. This is actually like fabric.
Yeah.
So like that's where like I keep not and not that you have to like announce things on social media, but
Right.
I want to like share with people that I'm doing it, but I also don't want it to sound like judgmental or preachy or like
Right.
people are bad if they're not doing stuff like that. It's just it's an
Yeah.
option that I have
Sure.
and it's something that I want to do because I can.
Yeah.
And there's these little steps.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, and I literally cannot remember where I even heard it or whatever, but it was just the idea that like we can't all do everything, but if we all do a little something, then it has a huge that can have a way bigger impact than just like a handful of people, you know, being sustainable, being zero waste, doing all these things. It's like that's great, but like not everybody can live that way, especially in the society we have. So if we're all at least contributing in some way as much as we can, then like that's going to be the sweet spot, right? So I think that's totally doable, and you don't have to commit to one way or the other. And I think that authenticity of coming to your platform exactly as you are and just saying like, yeah, I mixed new and old or new and secondhand or whatever, I think can also inspire people to be like, I could do that, you know. Maybe they have been considering that, or they just didn't necessarily know that there were resources out there for sourcing that kind of fabric, that you don't
Yeah.
have to go to the quilt shop and buy it brand new. Although I'm a huge proponent for shopping local and
Me
shopping through
too. So
local
that's
quilt
where
shops.
there's some local quilt shops around here. There's one in
Yeah.
East Bay called Bay Quilts,
Yeah.
but it's amazing, owned by a mother-daughter. Like I want to support them also.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Yeah.
different kind of sides to it.
Yeah. And I think the more authentically we can show up on these platforms we have that we're so lucky to have, the easier it is to find your people, right? The people who want to support what you're doing and who you inspire and who can inspire you. And the easier it is to build these little communities within the community of quilting and sewing and making. And yeah, I just like just owning your authentic self and presenting that. And there's gonna be so many people that are on board with that. It's like you can't be everything to everybody and you can't do all the things all the time. So it's like, and I'm saying this more as a reminder to myself too. It's not preaching at you. I'm like,
Oh,
oh wait, I'm talking to myself right now. But just that, like, yeah, the more authentically you can show up, you're not going to be for everybody, but that's okay because you can't be for everybody and take care of yourself at the same time. So
yes, you are
soapbox.
correct. And I would say 75% of the things that I say to other people, I'm talking to
Yeah.
myself.
I'm like, right. Anyway, no. No. Well, this has been so great. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm so glad like we're getting to know each other because I'm feeling
Yeah.
very inspired. So this is so good. And you said you have a new pattern that's coming out?
End of March or
Okay.
middle end of March. It's testing right now.
Okay.
And we'll see if like I'm trying to find a way to do patterns that feels authentic to me.
Yeah.
And so I haven't quite figured out what that is. I think part of the way I'm doing it is I mean, I haven't really shared it yet, but it's a little bit of a it's just kind of different. And I
Yeah.
can't even really explain. But something else I'm gonna do, and I actually here I'll show you 'cause
Okay.
why not?
Yeah.
Um, I want to because apparel has always been like such a big part of my life. I want to do anytime I do like a quilt pattern or something, I want to somehow tie it to um something that's like a wearable because I
Mhm.
do also think like I mean what's better than getting to wear your quilts
Right.
like as I use them. So I'm doing like so
Oh,
this is the quilt pattern,
oh my
but I
gosh.
made a super duper mini version that's like a little separate pattern for a jacket. So I'm like
Oh,
experimenting with that idea of like having everything kind of have friends
yeah.
of like you can make this as a full size, but then because I like creating a lot of different work for myself because it's totally scaled down and I had to write like a completely separate pattern for it because I'm crazy. But doing like yeah, having that idea of quilting meets like wearing type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's so exciting. I love that. That is so cute. Yeah, I have a denim jacket that I have set aside because I'm gonna make a quilt block to put on the back. So that just like spoke my soul. I'm like, okay, I have to do it now because this is a
Yeah,
sign.
you do. You do.
Well, that's so cool. Okay, so we'll
Mm.
look for your new pattern. And is there any other projects that you have coming up that we should
Oh
be
my god.
keeping our eyeballs open for?
Who knows? I am like I'm also working on some bag
Mhm.
patterns, but again, I had this idea to do a zero waste pattern, which is kind of happening, but we'll see, but not like pouch like wearable bags. And then I do want to I had reached out there's someone named the Sustainable Quilter, and she
Uh-huh.
actually has a blog as well. And I recently reached out to her because I do want to find ways that again I can kind of because I have this background in textiles and know a lot about that part of the industry and where it's going, like
Mhm.
I want to find ways that I can kind of help move that conversation forward or get that conversation out more. And because it does, honestly, I was a little bit surprised when I joined the quilting world about how few like conversations there are or all of kind of the big fabric companies and stuff. I think I was expecting to see more kind of sustainable fibers and different stuff like that. And it does
Yeah.
feel like quilting is just the industry is a little bit more behind. So I don't know what that looks like, but that's kind of just something
Yeah.
that I personally wanna just figure out how I can kinda contribute to.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I follow the sustainable quilter, so that's really cool. Yeah, I love just seeing that concept and yeah, watching people collaborate and work together to improve this industry just like it warms my heart because I love it so much and I want to see it continue into the future and if that means we have to kind of take a step back and take a bigger overview
Mm,
look at things, then like let's do it, you know. Let's not just keep our nose down and keep plowing through. Well, this is the way things have always been, so we have to keep it that way. It's like that's not how things grow and stay alive.
yeah,
So that's so exciting. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Radha. I really
of
have
course.
loved our conversation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your new quilt pattern come out. And yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. It was really nice to meet you and talk about all these things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll chat again soon.
For sure.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.